Why, I doubt if he'd even recognize a flying saucer if you brought him one on a plate with a sprig of parsley on the top. He exhaled loudly through his front teeth to apply his air brakes and made a skillful three-point landing on the mat at the bottom of the stairs. Darbishire landed beside him, muttering "a-junk, a-junk, a-junk, a-junk," to show that he was throttling back his powerful engines, and for some moments they stood on their makeshift runway, shaking their heads sadly over the shortcomings of the staff. There was a comfortable, easy-going bond of friendship between the two boys, and much of it sprang from the fact that each was quite unlike the other, both in appearance and character. Jennings was the taller of the two, a friendly-looking boy of 11 with untidy brown hair and a wide-awake look in his eyes. He had about him the restless, eager air of one who acts first and thinks afterwards, of one who must be up and doing in all his waking moments, lest the grass should grow beneath his feet. Darbishire, on the other hand, would not have worried unduly to find a whole prairie of grassland sprouting beneath his size 3 school sandals. But fortunately, his duties as Jennings' right-hand man gave no opportunity for such an alarming state of affairs to occur. For Darbishire was quieter in manner, a loyal follower, but never a leader in the exploits and misadventures of school life. He was fair and curly, with a solemn, rather earnest look about his thin features. Behind his ink-splashed spectacles shone a pair of mild blue eyes which sparkled or clouded with every change in his feelings, as surely as a barometer recording the advent of sunshine or storm. Presently Jennings said, "Well, let's not bother about old Wilkie any more. I had enough trouble racking my brains all through his English lesson to last me for some time." Darbishire looked surprised. "What were you racking them about? I never heard him ask you any questions." "Oh, no, it wasn't old Wilkie's fault," Jennings explained. "I was trying to make up my mind between 2 engine noises. Listen, Darby. Which one sounds more like a spaceship landing on the moon? Vroom, 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 or doing, doing, doing?" It was a question of some importance, and Darbishire frowned thoughtfully as he tried out both noises with the full force of his lungs. "I don't really know, Jen," he was forced to admit when the echoes had died away. "You see, my spaceship doesn't make that sort of noise at all. It just goes grinkle, grunkle, grunkle, ever so softly, because I've got a secret patent lever I've invented. It's a supersonic gadget. You just give it a flick and off you go. Mars, Venus, Mercury, anywhere you like." He flung out his arm in a sweeping gesture to indicate the outermost limits of space. Then he added, "And you needn't try to pretend that you've got one too, because it's my own special invention, copyright reserved." Jennings was not impressed. "I bet it's not so good as my supercharged atomic rockets," he said. "I'll challenge you to a race to prove it if you like. The first one to get up the stairs and into the library, eh?" "Righto," Darbishire agreed. "We could pretend the library is the moon, and you and I can be rival space pilots racing to be the first one ever to set foot on its surface. I like those chaps in that scientific comic of yours that Mr. Wilkins confiscated." "Let's get our engines warmed up first, then," said Jennings. "Voom, voom, voom, doing, 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 chigga, 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 grinkle, grunkle, grunkle," replied Darbishire, setting the mighty motors in action with a deft flick of an imaginary lever. The hall resounded to the roar of Jennings's rockets as the self-styled spaceships taxied to the starting point at the bottom of the stairs. But before they could become airborne, the door of the nearby staff room was flung open and Mr. Carter looked out to lodge a protest. "If you must make that uncouth and horrible hullabaloo, I'd advise you to go as far away from the staff room as possible," he suggested reasonably. "How on earth do you expect me to add up marks with all the noise of a brass foundry going on just outside the door?" "Sorry, sir. We were being spaceships," Jennings apologized. "It wasn't meant to sound like a brass foundry, sir. We were just setting off on a race to the moon." "No doubt. But if interplanetary travel consists of grunting and snorting through your back teeth, I prefer something a little more old-fashioned," Mr. Carter observed. Darbishire felt called upon to put in a word for the march of progress. "My father says rockets and spaceships are the coming thing, sir. Of course, nowadays we only pretend to zoom off to the moon and places, but one day, sir, who knows?" "Who does indeed?" replied Mr. Carter with a smile. He was an agreeable, understanding sort of man in his early 30s. This meant that though still young when judged by grown-up standards, he had already achieved a ripe old age in the eyes of the boys whom he taught. He had been at Linbury Court for some years.